You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back to the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored. New tonight, a green light for some school employees to carry guns in Georgia. The new policy has been approved in Cobb County. That's the state's second largest school district. Now, the tragedy in Uvalde has sparked a lot of conversation about preventing school shootings. But both of my next guests agree arming staff is not the answer to the problem.
What do you think? Will this make schools safer? Kristen Anderson, University of Houston downtown. Let's begin with you on this.
Yeah, after the tragic shooting at Uvalde, it's really understandable that parents and administrators would be in a panic and trying to figure out solutions for, to make their children safe. But a policy like this is an absolute disaster. For a number of reasons. Anytime you add guns to a situation, you add the potential for gun violence. That's whether you have a gun at a grocery store, as a security officer, or you have a gun in your own home. Having retired police officers, retired military, not in uniform, carry concealed guns, as is being proposed at this with this school board, it is a disaster. If there is a mass shooting and that person with the concealed weapon has drawn their gun to do the right thing, to have the courage to try to protect the people they're supposed to protect. What happens when law enforcement arrives? Law enforcement doesn't anymore say stop in the name of the law like old dragnet TV shows. They will shoot the person who is carrying a gun. And so it puts that person at risk. Any type of law enforcement or pseudo law enforcement with weapons in schools put students of color at risk. Students of color, particularly Black students, are already criminalized. They're already treated differently. They get sent to a juvenile facility when white students get sent to the principal's office. So they are possible targets as well. Police officers shoot Black people who are unarmed about 3 times more often than white people. So students of color, faculty of color, coaches who are ethnic minorities, these folks are going to be at risk for policies like this.
Kristen, you paint a dark picture there, but it's reality. It's reality. And we're talking about more guns on campuses, and we had 400 law enforcement officers at Uvalde, and they were not able to adequately stop a shooter there. So what makes them think putting more guns at Cobb County will make a difference? Greg, let's bring you into this.
Both of you hit the head right on the head. I agree with the professor about the potential for other mishaps to take place when you arm people like this. And as you said, Isaiah, you had 300 cops, armed cops in Uvalde who didn't do anything. And you can't say this is just a one-off, because it's practically the same thing happened in Parkland. What gets me is that these people that make these decisions never go to the people who are directly impacted by their actions. You want to talk about arming, well, in this case, you want to arm people who aren't teachers, but in other instances, you want to talk about arming teachers. But they never go and speak to the people on the ground, the teachers themselves, about and this happens with a lot of safety programs as well. They don't talk to the teachers about the best way they think or they believe they can protect the classroom and protect the students in the class. They just make some blanket policy and say, you guys are going to follow it. And in some cases, that costs people their lives. The teacher in Uvalde even made the statement. He followed the directions, he followed the policy, and he felt like a sitting duck. And I spent this entire summer, I told you this before, Isaiah, speaking to teachers about how they feel about, being armed and what do they think is the best way to protect their classrooms. And I'm putting a program together to do just that, based on the information I got from the people who are impacted by this, or as they say, the stakeholders in this, the people that are not being listened to. And that's very important. We should start listening to these teachers and doing a better job of protecting them and helping them protect themselves and the students.
And Kristen, what advice would you give this school board if they would listen to you about dealing with the safety of schools? Obviously, like we said in Uvalde, lots of guns there, but it did not stop. They roamed for 70 minutes, while they were there. What advice would you give school districts to address their concerns and their paranoia about these shooters out there? And it's real. It's real.
Well, unfortunately, my advice isn't very satisfactory, because we do want to immediately feel safe. We want immediate changes, and I can absolutely understand that. But what I would suggest the school board do is take the energy that they do have in considering unfortunate policies like this, and target the guns. Citizens can run for school board, they can run for public office. The problem is access to guns. Again, I've said this on your show many times, we are the only country with this problem. We have a gun violence problem like no other country. It is the guns. And there are so many things we can do without, undermining the Second Amendment. We can still have the Second Amendment, but we can heavily regulate guns, as they do in countries that have a lot of guns, like Switzerland. Again, it's always the guns.
And Greg, would you agree with that? Just too many guns out there here in this country. Obviously, you're working on a plan, but you're not able to give that up to us now. But what would be your advice to this school board and this district and other school boards around the country? Obviously, this is happening in Cobb County, Georgia now.
Right. The advice I would give them is to go back and rethink this plan, okay? Because there are too many unknown variables that can take place. As I said before, you're going to arm these non-officers. What makes you think they're going to be in a better mindset or a better equipped to deal with someone who comes into school with guns than an armed police officer? As we said earlier, the cops didn't respond in Uvalde. So what is it? You're going to go out and hire people that are going to go in and respond in this instance? And what are you going to arm them with? Are you going to arm them with handguns? Or are you going to arm them with the same type of, obviously you can't conceal an AR-15. So they're going to have handguns as well. And if they're outgunned, what makes you think they're going to fare any better than the police officers being in those schools?